This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 110. If you find yourself often overwhelmed and stressed out, I encourage you to go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm and watch my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive woman entrepreneur. Now here is today's episode. Well, welcome, sisters. Oh, I'm so excited about this upcoming conversation. Today, my guest is Liz Lewinson, and she has had an executive career span from public relations, Wall Street technology, and nonprofit management. Liz is the award-winning author of American Buddhist Rebel, Women, Meditation, and Power, and The Power of the Loving Man. She is a longtime practitioner and teacher of meditation and mindfulness. She enjoys upending traditional repressive views of power, women, and men. Liz is also the vice president of the Frederick P. Lenz Foundation for American Buddhism. Liz, I just want to say thank you so much for being on today and welcome.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I'm happy to be here.
Share with my lady listeners, what got you into talking about women, leadership, and their power?
Well, I began meditating long ago when I was 19, but what specifically got me into looking more deeply into the dynamics and the power of women was actually a talk I heard literally, it was in the early 80s when this was not as well known of a topic. And this was from a Buddhist teacher, and he was saying that women are more powerful than men. Ooh. Period. End of story. Someone asked him, what's the difference between men and women? And his one-line answer was, women are more powerful.
Wow.
That really got me looking I heard more of his approach to that. I started to look at it. I looked at it and understanding it socially and politically, all kinds of ways. And that observation continues to the present day of all the subtle and not so subtle ways that both men and women still do not get the full power of women.
I love that, and I totally agree with that. So I would love you to share a little more, like, how do you actually define power then?
Okay, that's a really good question. I define power as it is in nature, because I think the most strong exhibitions of power that we ever see are the natural exhibitions of power, like a hurricane or an earthquake or a volcano. In those cases, what they all have in common is change and fluidity. And that is how I define power. I define power as change and fluidity when things change form and energy is released. And that in nature is power. And that, as I looked again at it more closely, I said, well, naturally, when you understand that power is change and fluidity, so for example, you can have a little breeze. The wind is very light. You're sitting there, great, lovely little wind. Then that wind speeds up and it gains volume and it gets faster and faster until the mass of it and the speed of it turns it into, let's say, a Cat 5 hurricane that just blows everything in its way. It's still wind, but what changed was how fast it's moving, how fluid it's going, and how much change is creating internally to create all the momentum. And that's exactly the same, actually, with any kind of power. Nuclear power is from fission. When an atom splits, power is created, energy is created. And when they were able to capture that, that's how nuclear power works. So back to women. Women are clearly the more powerful of the two genders, men and women, because we are much more fluid and changing in our actual structure. It's in our energy body around us, is faster and more fluid. It vibrates more quickly than the male energy body. But it also demonstrated in physical body. So we women, we get our periods every month, which is a great thing. It's something to celebrate. We have the capacity for childbirth, whether or not we do it. It's built in. We know that we have multiple orgasms. We have higher sexuality. All the faster fluidity and change symptoms are baked into the female infrastructure. And so I define power as fluidity and change.
And I've never actually heard it really described the way you just described it, but I'm just like, oh, that's true. Yeah, we can do that. We do have the ability to do that. Love it. So
it is true.
Yeah, well, absolutely, it is true. So now let's flip it just a little bit. Then how do you define leadership then?
Well, good leadership will take advantage of the innate qualities of fluidity and change.
Yes.
So one of the things I think that women, we have not had good role models for many centuries, if not about the last 5,000 years. There are occasional good ones. But now I think we might have a good one in Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand.
Yes.
I was looking at her leadership qualities recently, and I agree with all these things. So if you are basing your leadership on your acknowledging and honoring your internal fluidity and change, that actually means part of this fluidity that extends beyond your physical body. Again, this subtle physical body around a woman is much, much wider. It has a beautiful, deep intuition. You're born with it. This means that if you have, as a leader, kindness and empathy, and then you add in wisdom, because leaders need to be smart. You need to be continually, if not going to school yourself, you need to surround. Let's say you are in a leadership or seek one position. You should be getting smarter and more knowledgeable about what it is you need to lead in, or get advisors to help you. You would then also want to combine your kindness and empathy and wisdom with decisiveness.
Yes.
But beneath all that is, at the core, is this fluidity and change that if you see an obstacle, you do not pound it into submission. You flow around it. You find ways to keep progress going. And at the same time, you have this sense of inner light and honor. And that's why I do always say that meditation does beautifully fit into leadership, because having the sense of this inner depth and light gives you fluidity and change just throughout your whole awareness.
Yeah. And I know some of my past episodes, I've talked about how, like you're saying, a true leader continues to evolve because there's the learning and growth. You're seeking the continuation of evolving and shifting. And it's more about the inclusion, the empathy, but mindfulness is a big piece of that. And many leaders who I would call like kind of the evolving leaders know that. It's like meditation is a big piece of their evolution, because we do need to go within. Whether I talk about this as a therapist, I also talk about this as a coach, that we have to have the silence in order for that inner wisdom to really come forward. And that's a big piece of that. So any leader needs to be able to make time to have the quietness as well.
I agree 100%, Nicole. And I think that most leaders, and I think, again, particularly women leaders, and particularly this time, because we know that historically women have been suppressed and they have been repressed in very major ways, every possible way, politically, socially, with education, physically. Women have been denied of everything, and it's been for thousands of years. And this means that women actually have to step further to lead now. And women should not stop, in my opinion. So one of the things that can happen is that a woman says, well, I've made a lot of progress and I'm leading now. And I would just say, to your point, there's always more to learn and there's always more to take on responsibility and leadership because the world needs female leadership. Female leadership is going to have that element of intuition and fluidity and power behind it that is not domination and control, because that's not power.
Right. And that's not leadership at all. That's just domination and control.
Right. Women have the ability to say power is gaining consensus, is gaining the more positivity. So that's another word that should come in here, is positivity. And the more you can even have others around you in your immediate circle, and then the larger circle of your leadership feeling positivity, and with that as a goal, the more effective you will be as a leader.
And I also just heard you say too, Liz, or like there's a hinting of that collaboration piece of it. I think there's so many women do that so well. The collaboration, it's like, okay, maybe this thing that I'm trying to do, this task or whatever, is not my strong suit, but I can collaborate with somebody who is, and they think differently than I do, versus, again, power and control over that person. I can work with them to make this a win-win situation. Doesn't mean it happens every single time, but there's a difference in how you lead, is how we work together versus against one another.
Exactly. And that's, again, I think that fits right into the change in fluidity definition.
Yeah.
In fluidity, you can collaborate because you can leverage and recognize each other's strengths. And to me, if you see, I remember there was one of the governmental budget crises. This was actually the previous administration. But anyways, there were a whole bunch of men. There were no women in the photo. They were all sitting in a room and they were just rigid. And all you sensed was rigidity. And then there was a group of women who got together and they said, we could solve this budget crisis in 4 days. They were bipartisan and smart women, because the women that get to those offices have all been highly educated and highly trained. It's very smart. And I think that that's absolutely correct, because if you are having comfort level, which is built into your being with this fluidity and change, this is like, hi, sister, you know you've been changing ever since. By the time you're 20, I mean, your body's been already through so many changes. You've already been accustomed to being just much more fluid and collaborative and approachable. And these are total strengths for leaders.
Yeah.
Our leadership qualities.
Well, you had mentioned just a little bit ago about sometimes women, they're doing that inner work, but yet there's still something that kind of holds them back from really stepping more into the power or stepping more into leadership roles. So how or what do women need to do to really overcome some of these obstacles and really raising their power level, and so that they can achieve some leadership?
Well, there are some practical things to do. So I know you talk about meditation. Let's say we'll just give that as a given. You learn to meditate. There's so many ways. There isn't one right way. Learn many ways. Okay, so do that. Keep yourself as the best physical shape you can, because exercise builds your energy level. Practical things. If you are stuck, I recommend technology as one of the best careers. You can go and take a 6-month class in coding, for example, get a position that will support you and your family for the rest of your life. This is not the case with many, many other professions. And the thing about technology is it puts your mind in a very sharp state. So if you were really in a place income-wise where you're stuck and you need to do something, I recommend technology as the path to being in a position where you're not just scrambling to exist, but be in a really respected and strong position in terms of strength. Once you're there or in any place, so one of the first things is you want to look around. How do you stabilize yourself financially? Because some people are definitely grappling with that as much as possible. But to lead in other ways, and there's just, why not take initial steps? First get involved with perhaps your school if you have children, or your community if there's a community. Go and get engaged in things that are clearly helpful. Continually build up your power level by, if you are just have an hour a day, what are you doing to kind of build up your mental skill, you can take online classes right now and just do the one thing you've been putting off or afraid to do. Go learn a spreadsheet, go learn something that will give you a skill set that could help other people. And you could just be a leader in your own space. Learn computers if you haven't learned it. There's things you can look around and you know some things you have to do. Start where you are and build. That would be make a list. Do a systems analysis, you call it in computer science, and analyze where your fears are that you are not doing things because of fear. And then look, can you do them?
Yeah. Well, and I like what you're talking about too. Yes, everything that you just mentioned is very practical, and it's also empowering. So again, it's facing these fears. It's like creating the time. It's like, oh, I've got an hour free where, let's say the kids are at school, or you're like, I don't know what to do now. I mean, COVID's given a lot of people extra quote time due to being home at more. And it's like, oh, I can learn something else. And everything that you're saying, it's a building block. It's a stepping stone to feel more empowered, to really lead your own life, which then really truly can lead into other type of leadership roles if you choose to go down that path. And I like to just the STEM stuff, right? The science, technology, engineering, math, all of those things I've talked about a little bit before on this podcast and another podcast I did. But we know technology isn't going to go anywhere. And I mean, we've relied heavily with it regarding COVID. So it's like that field is definitely opened up. And if you've got any inkling whatsoever, start to seek it out. And yeah, if it only takes, 6 to 8 months or whatever to get a degree like in coding, then beautiful, go for it.
It really does work. I will say that. I would say that for women, there's the so-called women's professions like massage or healthcare or even nursing. I don't actually recommend those for women. You know why? Because we are quite psychic. We have a very powerful nervous system, but it's also sensitive because of all that fluidity. So I would say women should avoid hand things where you do lots and lots of touching of strangers. You can just suck up their feelings and emotions. And women should also realize that if they're feeling unempowered, they should take it as part of that system analysis. Look around. Who are you surrounded by? Because we're all very psychic. And women in particular are susceptible to the thoughts and feelings of other people. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who have a low opinion of you, that will transfer into you.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. You don't want that. You should actually make another list. You should list who's negative in your life and start to remove those people. And if those people are, intimate family people, unfortunately, either they're going to change or you're going to move on. And that's okay. Because when you want to lead, women in general always have a desire to help other people. And the leadership that I'm talking about, I agree with this right now, and the stage we're at in history, I believe it's so much more critically important for women to lead than to continue stuck in a life where there might be all kinds of people around them that say, you can't do that, or they're jealous, or they're threatened. That's another one that happens. So I think women, I would go for the bigger picture and say, I want to help people. I want to lead. I want to be, one of the really interesting, cool women leaders that we see emerging. And if people around you are holding you back with doubt and fear, or you yourself are holding yourself back with doubt and fear, I would try to, as we said earlier, I would find ways, what else are you afraid of? Because sometimes when you just do something very seemingly innocuous that you've been afraid to do, it shows you that you can overcome fear.
Right. Yeah. Fear, again, fear is nothing more than the ego telling you basically you're outside your comfort zone. It's what you know. And anytime we take action, we actually begin to gain confidence through our action steps that we do.
That's right.
So like what you're saying too, if your support system is projecting their fears onto you, projecting their self-doubt onto you, you start to learn not to share every beautiful idea that you have with them. You turn towards those who will help cheerlead you on, support you. They may, challenge some of the things that you are talking about, but do it in a way that is actually helpful versus tearing you down. So sometimes it's just you limit the amount of space or time you have with some family members if they are unable to support you in the way that you're needing because of their own limitations.
Sometimes we don't want to admit to ourselves what's going on out there, but if you're honest with yourself and you say, I want to make change, but I just seem blocked, is it one of the best things is to get out a piece of paper and make lists.
Yes.
I'm a big list maker, and you just look at it and say, what's working on one side of the page, what's not working, and be honest. And then you start to make changes, even if it's one at a time, and your goal is leadership. Your goal is to be a leader of people, of friends, and not to be egotistically over them in any way, but rather you're setting an example. Leadership is a very big thing, a very wide range of options and possibilities. Leadership can just be learning to meditate and then doing it, actually practicing it, and letting the changes happen in your life. That's a form of leadership because other people will notice and they go, oh, I guess meditation works after all, and I'll try it. And I find meditation has always helped me to be a leader.
Yeah.
It gives you so much more self-confidence, just naturally.
Yeah. And I know you've talked about this on another podcast interview you were on. I was sharing a little bit before I hit record that there was a question one of the interviewers gave you. It's like, well, so what, there's often a big fear just around meditation in general. And I hear that as well with people that I work with, of just like, oh, but I don't want to just sit there and it's really scary. And it's like, so sit with the unknown. That's really what it is.
Well, that's true. And meditation, just in like 25 words or less, you will learn something to focus on.
Yes. And
it could be any number of things, but the focus purpose is if you can focus intently on one thing, you can then let go into stillness.
Yes.
And if you go into stillness, it's not, like you said, it's not passive, it's gorgeous.
Yes.
It's light filled, it's filled with happiness. It's your inner state, and your inner state just got covered over. Like the bottom of a boat gets barnacles on it and all stuff grows on it. Same with our being. There's just so much stuff we have had pretty much pressed on us from the moment we were born. So we carry it with us like heaviness. And when you start to meditate and learn that focus, and then you let go into much more light and happiness, then that starts to fall away.
Yeah, it does. And I'm smiling as you're talking about it. It's like it is. It's like you can reach this other blissful state, the inner calm. And it's such a beautiful thing the more that you do it.
It is. It really is.
Well, talk just a little bit more then regarding kind of the meditation and mindfulness. There was one of these questions about how does that come into play for women and men seeking to rebalance really the wrong perceptions of power and leadership. So you were just highlighting that just a little bit more, but go a little bit further between men and women and how meditation and mindfulness really can help rebalance how the viewpoint is for both genders.
Well, I think if men meditate and if women meditate, there's actually a place inside of us that has no male or female at all. It's just pure stillness. But one of the ways that you can help yourself feel better and be more productive in your life is to decide, where does my power in everyday living lie? And that's why I talk about the power of women as just being pure raw power. I had a vision that the power of women resembles a tsunami fully risen. And if you can visualize that, and you're standing literally in front of a huge tsunami wave, hearing it roar and extending in every single direction, that happened to me, Nicole. I had that vision, and I knew what I was looking at. I knew I was looking at the power of women. It's that huge. It's that vast. It's that pure planetary power that females embody and represent. And then actually and I write about that in both my books, I said the same time that happened, I said, well, if this is the power of women, what does this male power look like? And then my whole awareness shifted, and I was looking at this network of golden lines. And it was very beautiful. Nothing like, it was very refined, and it was more like it could be a container of some kind. And this container, as I write about, a container of love, not necessarily romantic love, but higher feelings of gratitude and joy and awareness and compassion and humility. Those are wonderful, powerful qualities for men. So I teach, and these 2 books I wrote are really directed just at what I'm saying. I say to men, develop your humility and your compassion, your loving kindness. I'm not talking about your romance levels here, because that's just one type of love. I'm talking about the ability to love life and nurture and support these powerful women that you encounter. Be delighted by it. And then for women, I say something different. I say just use your meditation practice to just build and become comfortable with this idea of pure power pulsing through you to be used in a kind and effective way. And with all your other qualities of leadership, you will have this sort of middle approach to helping. And that's kind of why I mentioned Jacinda Ardern at the beginning. If you want to look at a role model, she is not only head of New Zealand, which is 5 million people, she's setting an example. Everyone writes about her now.
Yeah.
She is showing what leadership looks like. And she is tough.
Yes, she is. She is. She's compassionate yet tough. I so am inspired by her.
Yeah. That's why she's good to look at, everybody. Watch her debate with her political opponents. She is tough. She doesn't give an inch. And she is smart, and she is knowledgeable, and you couldn't push her over. She is. Then at the same time, read about how, she responded to the shooting at a mosque. She was there the next day in a headscarf, hugging everybody. And the day after that, those types of guns were banned from New Zealand. And here we are in this country. And it's how many years have we been trying to get rid of these horrible assault rifles?
Yep.
She got them done. She just knocked it out. And that was her leadership, and that was her decisiveness, and that was her ability to influence her immediate team of male and female politicians to do the right thing. And when we talk then about the power of women being much greater than we think, it is in action, definitely is in your meditation. And for men, meditation, the power they need to develop that's been suppressed in men is this aspect that is completely outside of the so-called man box. It's completely different than what they were brought up to believe. It's all about a huge amount of refinement and loving kindness is a very nice word. Passion is a nice word. These are qualities that will make men feel more powerful than they've ever felt before.
Yeah. I love that. And sorry, I was just kind of caught up on all the things that you were saying. I'm just like, yep, I love it. Because it's a really reshifting of both.
That's right.
Yeah, for men and women. And it's like getting us out of our own constraints or the constraints that we've had since we've been young and really breaking through that. So, and there's a way to do that for sure. So Liz, I know we're coming up here close to time, but I'm curious for you, share a little bit with my ladies who are listening. Like, what does your meditation practice look like for you? Because of all the work that you do, I get you do some of the strategic stuff, and you've got, your power and your past in tech and journalism and so many different realms. What does that look like for you now, that meditation, your practice? Well,
I do try to practice twice a day.
Okay.
Before breakfast and before dinner around sunset. I actually teach this not in the 2 books about women and men. I teach a practice which is a very good meditative start. It's not a beginning practice, but it's really a strong, powerful practice. And it's meditating, which some of your people might know on energy centers in the body,
Oh,
the
yeah.
chakras, and the power center, the heart center, and intellect.
Mm-hmm.
And without going into all the detail, I do chakra or energy center meditation.
Okay.
Still just in my meditation practice now, it's been going on a while. I always start with that focus.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I find as time has passed is I'm more able to go then into the pure stillness and experience this very beautiful stillness and upliftment and a sense of doorways, just spiritually opening.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the meditation ends and you take a few minutes, and I think affirmations are great too. Send yourself some great, beautiful thoughts, like what a wonderful day you're going to have. Even if it's not, just say that. I'm going to learn things today. It's going to be a day that positive things get done. And then I try to make every single day, I always feel if I could just do a couple positive things, meaning something got done. I keep lists. I'm huge on to-do lists. And I like to feel like a couple things on my to-do list, including ones I've been procrastinating about, got done. And then when there's moments of leadership, but it's not for me day in and day out, but I have so many projects going that I just push them along, and not to say push is the right way. I move them along with the intent of fluidity and change and with positivity. So I have bunches of teams I work with, and I always like to feel like we're interacting very positively and like a team, and that we're all appreciating each other and everyone's doing the best they can.
Yeah, for sure.
Does that help, Nicole?
It does. Yeah. Because, sometimes I talk about on the podcast or even with clients that I work with, like anchoring your day with that, like the calm space, which is meditation or mindfulness in the morning before you really dive into your job, your career, whatever, or your family life, and then ending it on that day. So it's like you're anchoring the beginning and the end of your day in that space of calmness. Or like you're saying, if you need to clear out the chakras, to be able to clear that energy that may have been stuck or cloudy or clogging things up before you go to bed. It's a beautiful way of doing that.
Yeah. And in this case, as I said, I focus intently on the chakras with a beautiful light or color associated with those three in particular, because that's a nice way to focus. Many ways to meditate. This is a particularly, I think, a good one. And if you meditate, they always also say meditate and forget about it. Just let the energy of it go into your day. And if you're just starting, know that it doesn't necessarily expect to see change overnight. You will probably meditate for a couple of weeks without noticing anything. I didn't notice anything until about 3 weeks. And then I remember feeling this new, beautiful, light, bright energy coming up inside me. It was so fresh. I felt, I knew it was from meditation because I'd never felt it before.
Oh, beautiful. I love
it was like a spring of water.
And Liz, really quickly, before I share your website and all that stuff, the books that you've been mentioning and that I mentioned at the very beginning of the show in the intro, are my listeners able to find that on your website as well if they want to check out your books too?
Right. The books are on Amazon, and it's Women, Meditation, and Power. And the other one is called The Power of the Loving Man. And yeah, they're out there and they're filled with practical advice.
Beautiful. And ladies, if you just want to find out more about Liz in general, you can go out to her website. And again, I'll have it in the show notes, which is lizlewinson.com.
And I actually am on Facebook and Instagram, but those are little pops of social stuff. But lizlewinson.com has everything collected.
Okay, beautiful. So ladies, you can find her out there. And again, I will have all of her social media links, everything in the show notes as well. And Liz, I just want to say thank you so much for being on and for really the work that you're doing to help really not only raise women up to stand more in their power and be in leadership, but also shifting how men view women in leadership and women in power, because there is a lot of reshifting, I guess is the only way I want to say that, reshifting the energy and how that is viewed. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your gratitude. It's very sweet.
To sign up for my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm.